Hi, Josh. Welcome to the Polypody Review. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Super excited to be here chatting with you.
Good, good. I'm particularly hoping to use this session as I know in the UK, your books have been popular, but you don't have a huge profile here, as do not many US herbalists. It's one of those my great regrets that a lot of herbalism doesn't seem to cross the Atlantic Ocean. So there's people who are in the States who are really super famous in the States. And I only find this out through other US herbalists who've really not been heard about much here at all. So I'm pretty sure it's vice versa as well. So anyway, Josh, I'm going to hit you with our first question, which is a bit of a standard one for everyone. When did you become a plant person, or when did the plant speak to you? Was it early in life or later in life?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't remember a time when I was not fascinated by plants.
Wow.
Was
Okay.
very, fortunate to be raised by people who gardened and spent a lot of time in nature, hiking,
Hmm.
camping, and there was always just this, for me, a sense of almost being more comfortable and more at home with plants than sort of anyone else, in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they've always been there and they've always been a very important part of my fascinations and even my spiritual practice has always been very plant centered in its own way. Um, but I think it got really serious in my early teens, when I really started figuring out there was more underneath the surface,
Right.
to plants.
And is there a particular experience that you remember that like it was like, oh my God, wow, this whole new world I didn't realize was there, or was it a more gradual process?
I think both gradual in that I'm always learning new things and I mean, you know, nearly 50 now and have been doing this for a very long time and still every day I keep getting these like, oh my, wow, like ahas, constantly being surprised. But I think like a lot of people, and maybe this is more something that happens in the States, and maybe there's a different version of this in the UK. But when I was 12 or 13, being introduced to the author Scott Cunningham and
Right?
reading his, I'm almost, I'm pretty positive it was the Incense Oils and Brews book. And
Okay.
I kind of was in my teens in the 90s and that's kind of when his stuff, got really popular. And just sort of reading that and hearing him or reading him talk about plants that I knew that I could confidently identify or that we had growing in our gardens or that were, in our kitchen cabinet, in the way that he did, in the language that he used was transformative for me, just like blew something open. And it felt simultaneously, you know, very shocking in the best possible way, but also it felt very correct, like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And that was the beginning of all of it, really. It was, I think, that moment.
Okay. Brilliant. And when did you become a full-time herbalist then?
I finished my clinical practicums in 2016
Okay.
and immediately went into private practice. So, 2016 is when that started here. We opened up a small community herb shop in 2018 and closed that in 2023. And so now I'm back to just being in private clinical practice,
Right.
in addition to teaching. So, since 2016, with a few different iterations of what showing up as an herbalist has meant, but really happy where I am right now, for
That's it.
sure.
And where did you do your training?
I've done several full
Where did
programs,
you do your
but
several
the
trainings? Yeah.
the primary clinical program I did was East West.
Okay. Okay. If you could just tell us a bit about that, because that's not going to mean anything to the UK listener, probably.
Sure. So East West is a school that was founded by Michael Tierra, who's a
Okay.
relatively
Heard about him.
well-known
Yeah.
herbalist here. And he has a really cool approach to herbal medicine in that he is so well studied and well versed in traditional and classical Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and Western vitalist and humoral traditions that he was able really early on in sort of the herbal renaissance in America to say, oh, there's some really interesting places where these three seemingly very divergent traditions actually overlap very powerfully. So he took that kind of Venn diagram of these three approaches to herbal medicine and wellness and healing and took that sweet spot where they all overlap and really expanded on that as, building protocols of assessment, of writing formula, of bringing in herbs from the Chinese
Hang on, we've just lost sound for some reason. I don't know why. Don't know.
materia medica, the Ayurvedic materia medica, Western
Oh, here we
materia medica.
go. Here we go.
Oh, um,
Seems to be.
okay, looks good on my end.
Yeah, yeah. No, no,
Oh, it's
we're all right again now. It's probably some internet glitch. There we go.
yeah. Um, I'm not sure where you lost me, but yeah, really just taking those three traditions, finding where they all have an overlap, and then really expanding on that point of agreement. And so I really was fascinated by his approach, and that was the first, full clinical program I did, and I've done several since then, but very much informs the way that I think about herbal medicine,
Okay.
especially in a clinical setting, for sure.
And have you always used plant medicine as your preferred sort of health, first thing you reach for in health matters in your own life, sort of thing?
No, I would say that I came into the folklore, the magical ritual aspect of herbs very early on in my
Okay.
teens
Mm-hmm.
first, and didn't really make the connection to herbal medicine until, maybe I was 17 or 18. So it took a few years for like
Oh,
the
interesting.
whole
Yeah.
thing to click. I know I came kind of backwards. Um, but, now, of course, my go-to,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, brilliant. Um, and what do you think the state of herbal medicine is in the US at the moment? Like steady state, getting better, getting worse? I mean, what's the reaction to the man or woman on the street?
I think that people in general right now are fascinated by it. And I think that herbal medicine brings people into contact with these ideas of whole person wellness
Right.
and even whole person wellness in sort of the grand scheme of being part of the world, like reconnected to nature. Um, it brings it to people in a way that also has hope. And I think that for all of our incredible advances in allopathic medicine, there's oftentimes not a lot of hope, or there's not a lot of a sense of things being inspired and
Okay.
being really connected.
Hmm.
Um, Even when that medicine is at its best and really effective, it can still feel divorced from capital N nature, and it can still feel like people are sort of being kind of forcing uh, the process in a certain way. And the questions that I get from people when they hear about what I do, or if they come to a class or whatever, is always just like, wow, how does it work? And what have you seen? And what have you experienced? That these more like feeling questions
Yeah.
than anything
Yeah.
else. So I love that. I think that's an important approach to herbal medicine too, is that it's heart-centered and people
Definitely.
feel like they belong and
Yes.
that there's there's nothing novel about it. There's nothing exotic about it, that this is a medicine that's in our bones and that we've always been doing. And that for most people, even when we're doing remedial work, we're responding to health crises. There's a sense of, oh, I'm reconnecting to something that feels very right, that feels very old, that feels very natural for me.
Yes.
And I think that puts us in a really good space to heal.
For sure.
So yeah. For all the bad that's happening in the herbal world right now, there's that good. And that's what I try to focus on.
But there's no legislative challenges other than the ones you've always had to work around in the US coming up. Nobody's passing draconian laws or anything.
Nothing that's on my radar.
Good.
I go above and beyond. I actually run my practice by UK standards. So
Okay.
I look at organizations like the UK Association of Master Herbalists.
Hmm.
I use insurance that's at their level. I use because it's so unregulated in the States that
Okay.
it creates a lot of freedom for people. But in that freedom is also the aspect that sort of anybody can just say, I'm an herbalist, and then people expect that people will trust them and do what they recommend. Um, so it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I try to keep the bar high, you know.
Okay.
We of course have the American Herbalists Guild as well,
Yes.
which is an organization of set standards that was started by early American Renaissance herbalists. Michael Tierra, Rosemary Gladstar, all those guys. Um, some folks are part of that organization, some folks are not. I've been part of that organization since I graduated school. Um, and again, just to try to maintain that standard of the difference between lay herbalism and clinical herbalism, because I do think there's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, agreed. Yeah, it's interesting. So also, now you mentioned earlier that you live in the desert. So whereabouts in the US do you live? And if you could kind of describe the climate for people who might not know the geography of the US, probably a lot of people in the US as well. So
Yeah, I think especially when folks from the UK come to the States, this is generally not where they come, although good, it's beautiful here. I live in Utah, so I'm in the southwest of the United States, and we are very high elevation, nearly a mile in
oh,
elevation, so
okay.
very, very high up. And I'm in Salt Lake City. I'm in the capital city of Utah, and we're in a bowl made by ancient mountains
Okay.
that where I'm sitting right now used to be at the bottom of a lake. Very, very many millions of years ago, Lake Bonneville, we call it. And this is why Utah has some of the densest population of dinosaur fossils because as that lake receded and the dinosaurs followed it, they all kind of ended up here, which is the
Right.
end of, where, and we of course have the Great Salt Lake, which is endangered, unfortunately, but it's kind of the last little bit of water left from that. So I'm in a big bowl surrounded by very, very, very tall mountains, beautiful mountains. And we have four distinct seasons here. Our summers are very, very hot, and our winters are incredibly cold. Our springs and autumns are beautiful, gorgeous. Um,
So which is the best one
and
to visit in then, spring or autumn?
oh, I think, late April, early May here is pretty magical. I think for people to see how vibrant the
Yeah.
high desert can be, how much
Spring,
green we have,
springing up
how,
sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I always encourage people to come while the plants are growing because
Right.
I think people are sometimes surprised at the diversity that we have of both native plants and nativized plants, plants that have been brought in that have found that they do really well here and
So
they're happy
starting
here.
with the former, what sort of local herbs grow naturally? Is anything we will have heard of that is that
I mean, I think we have a pretty divergent,
sounds
bioregion
like it from
from
your description of
most
the geography?
places. Uh, I think that we have versions or species of plants that a lot of people will know. For example, one that I really love to talk about is milk vetch, which
Okay.
is it's a close relative and a medicinal analog to astragalus.
Well,
So,
yeah, which I knew, but I mean, I don't, because we don't really use milk. I mean, astragalus is used a lot over in the
mhm.
UK, but I don't think we use milk veg much.
Yeah, definitely one that we see here and I've worked with and I love. And we have beautiful, resinous evergreen trees,
Okay.
cedar and juniper and many types of
Yeah.
pine, which are, for me, really important kinds of medicine here. And because of our distinct seasons, we have growing seasons, and then we have seasons like now where very little is active. But plants do well here with not a ton of extra care,
Okay.
not a lot of they
Okay.
don't have to be spoiled necessarily, but we are higher elevation. We do face things like drought, so we have to be mindful of, if we're planting plants that require a lot of water, that's kind of
Not
doesn't make a lot of
guaranteed sort of
sense
thing.
for
Yeah.
where we are. But most people here have, beautiful, beautiful herb gardens and flower gardens and
Okay, that's quite not how I imagined it at all. So that's nice.
yeah,
And to
yeah,
tell
I
me a
have.
little bit more about what you use milk veg for.
So as an analog, we've just started to play around with milk vetch as I mean, just a literal copy paste for Astragalus membranaceus for like
Okay.
true Wang Chi, true Astragalus. I find that the milk vetch is not quite as sweet as true Astragalus, but I've taken this plant many, many times, and I do feel like there is that nice tonic,
Hmm.
effect. One thing that I think about tonic herbs, rasaans, adaptogens is when they grow in places where other plants seem to struggle. They've found that ability to adapt and thrive. And that's very much the case with this plant here. When we're up hiking in the foothills or getting even higher to elevation where it's really only scrub oak and juniper that can thrive, um, the milk vetch will be there. So to me, the plan is saying like, it's definitely got that adaptogenic reserve, that energy that we look for. Um, and
And would you say that for people, particularly living in that climate, a plant that like thrives in that climate is definitely going to be a good fit for them, sort of thing?
absolutely, I think you know, some of our most prolific wild plants, greater mullein
Oh yeah,
and gumweed, grandelia, lomatium, these are plants that speak to so many of the issues that people have living
right.
at high elevation in a bowl. And part of the downside of living in the bowl is that we get inversion. So
Oh
when smog and everything
yeah,
gets
yeah,
trapped here, and we have so many demulcent, cooling, softening herbs in this hot, dry, arid climate that move into the lungs and just help people breathe, which is a real issue here. Is a real We have a lot of days where air quality is not safe even for healthy people.
wow, okay,
So, yeah, I always think human people, when we work with plants that share our touch points in nature, they share our immediate space, we're already in relationship with them. We're already walking, a similar path to them. We're already experiencing the same cycles and seasons. There's already an agreement there. And I think
yeah,
the body itself is far more likely to let these medicines go in deeply when
yeah,
there's an agreement rather than, let's say we, import some medicinal herb from the middle of the Amazon, right? The body's going to say, "Oh, I don't have any sense of connection to this plant. Like it's so different from the animal that I am." Right? So, yeah, I love when we can work bioregionally, and if not with native plants, at least with plants that have shown that they're very happy to be
yeah.
here. That
Absolutely
when
agree.
we invite them in, they thrive. They
Yeah,
don't go crazy and become invasive, but we put them in our garden beds, and they're so happy, and they come back year after year, and they don't need a lot of extra love. They're just happy to be here. I also think about those plants as important allies, locally for sure.
wonderful. And do you, again, this is a $1 million question, and I think it's something that I'm interested in, and a lot of Is the diff? I mean, I think again, this is a question I think is made more of than is actually. There's probably more similarities to differences between US and UK dispensing. And certainly, I think there's probably more extremes of it in the UK, US, probably because it's a much bigger country, bigger habits. But do you? I mean, you would. So I can see those tinctures on your shelf, but also the herbs, the dry herbs, etc. A patient comes to you seeking a remedy, yeah, and do you use a lot of polypharmacy? I mean, do you try and get the one herb that will suit them best, or how does that work for you?
I this is a million dollar question, and I'm trying to think how to wrap it up in a way that's not as complicated as it actually is.
You can make it a bit
Uh,
complicated, but yeah.
I love the art of formulation. I love the concept of a formula being greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
challenging myself with figuring out how to create harmony in a formula that speaks to the individual person that that formula is going towards.
Hmm.
I think that on a more spiritual level, there's always one right plant or
Right,
one best plant, right? But sometimes in an hour and a half, it's not enough time for me to find that plant. Or, it's a plant the person has to go out and connect with in their own way, in a different way, and I can just sort of point at that. So a lot of times if I'm working with a tincture, it's a single herb. It's an individual herb that speaks directly to both the individual in their greatest expression of self, but
yeah,
also to the disharmony they're experiencing,
right.
and really talks about that path back to center, right?
Hmm.
Um, and at the end of the day, I'm a tisane herbalist. I push tea on people and I push tea
Good.
hard.
Yeah,
If people will drink tea and they will drink enough of it and as much of it as I want them to drink, I give tea. And my teas are almost always formulated.
right. Okay,
There's
that
almost
makes
always th three or five, herbs in there. Um, and uh, yeah, definitely a tea herbalist. I love the tinctures for ease and,
yeah. I know.
keeping people compliant. But if people will drink tea, I will give them tea.
Yeah, and I think it's coming back into fashion now, certainly with the people I talk to, that there's more of a, notation and like, hey, I know herbalists who make their own pills and things in like and stuff. And so I think that there is that convenience factor is starting to give over to like actually what works and
Yeah.
better in this case and that case sort of thing. So, tinctures are dead convenient. And will you give what sort of, I mean, if you're giving a single tincture to someone, what sort of dosage are you giving them?
It varies wildly. So if the plant being represented by that tincture speaks to a spiritual disharmony, a
Okay.
mindset, an emotional state, maybe a life path disharmony, because in my practice, there are no walls,
Right.
meaning when I bring herbal medicine into somebody's life, I don't believe the medicine stops at their body. I think it can flow into their relationships, into their belief systems, into their connections. It'll go
Absolutely.
wherever it needs to go. When I'm on that level, sometimes the dose is 3 drops.
Right.
The more subtle the body, the more subtle the dosing.
Yes.
If somebody comes in with an acute illness and they're really suffering and they're really sick and the body is in reactive mode, sometimes we're going up 45 drops,
Right.
higher,
Okay.
higher for shorter amount of time. So it varies wildly. I customize formulas, dosing, and protocol for every individual person I work with. Sometimes the right dose is 45 drops, but the person is in no health state to have that level of
Right.
power
Yeah.
or wisdom come into their body all at once. And so we start lower than I would like to, and we build them up, and then we move into a
Nice.
higher dose.
Nice. Yes.
Sometimes we start high and get softer as we move on. I tell people, take one less drop every day. Let's just get quieter and quieter and quieter as we kind of peel the onion, go from that physical level, that therapeutic, heroic level, slowly down into that softer, quieter spirit level.
Yeah.
Many different approaches to that for sure.
Um, and obviously, you have a lot of spiritual practices involved with your with your herbalism. Is that something your patients see up front, or do you introduce as much of that as you feel that they can, rather like I won't give them the really strong tea first time round, or how does that work?
So I'm pretty forthright with it up front.
Mhm.
I think people get what they get. That being said, the clinic where I practice is an Eastern clinic. I work in an acupuncture and apothecary. So we have five acupuncturists here, a doctor of physical therapy, a physio, I think you guys would call them,
Yep.
and then me. And two of our acupuncturists are also fantastic herbalists, Chinese,
Right.
TCM.
Yeah.
Um, so I try to be mindful that I'm in a clinical setting and that I always want every single person here to feel comfortable with our
Yeah.
medicine. But I also don't, I don't turn down or throttle too much, what I think about it. And part of why I'm a tea herbalist is the ritual of tea in and of itself is so powerful
Yes. Yeah.
of shifting us into a place of plasticity, of shifting
Hmm.
us into a
Hmm.
place of really experiencing for ourselves what needs to change and maybe even how it needs to change, and then allowing for that change to happen. And even the most left-brained, analytical, even skeptical people, I will absolutely have that conversation with them. I'll say, if you're putting your tea in a to-go mug and doing it while you're in traffic and in meetings all day, that's fine. But let one cup a day be a
Right.
cup taken in silence. Go sit outside and just drink the tea. Let the information, let the communication happen. Um, I'll always be forthright with the fact that my approach is from that angle,
Right. Yeah.
and I don't think I've ever had anybody um, say, oh no, I don't, people are willing, there again, it stirs something in it. There's something when we hear that it's like, yeah, like it does make sense that if I go sit outside and put my feet on the ground and drink the tea, it does make sense that that's medicine. It does make sense
Yeah.
that that's
Oh,
time that could be transformative for me. So you're like, yeah, I'll do that, you know?
I
So
know I know a
little
herbalist
balance for
who
both. Yeah.
starts all his sessions with when he first meets the patient, he will always make up a tea of he has it in a thermos usually. It's a rose tea, but with added rose water and a few drops of rose tincture as well. And he just says it opens up the heart of everybody, so they could you can just communicate better.
I love that.
I know, nice,
I
yeah.
do something very similar at about the halfway point of
Okay,
my sessions. Once I've
right,
kind of gotten to know somebody and I'm feeling where they are and what they need, there will be a plant in the room, I say.
right.
Like there will be like, oh, give me a minute. Let's go take a little break and we're going to make some tea and, at that point, bring the plants in to the
Okay.
conversation, you know?
Brilliant. And you said you for some years you ran a little shop apothecary, yeah? And I know this is a dream for a lot of herbalists, but now you're back in private practice. What was the reasons for that? Or if they weren't purely economic or work-life balance, or I'm just interested what the experience was like because I know it's something that a lot of people who become herbalists, it's that, oh, wouldn't it be nice one day to have a little apothecary shop? I know
Yeah.
some who do, but it's interesting.
Yeah, we all want that dream. So my shop opened in 2018, end of 2019,
Oh,
COVID,
okay.
COVID restrictions, and then 2020.
Yeah.
Um, so we had COVID against us, but then we had COVID for us in the sense
Oh,
that
yeah.
we stayed open
Oh, right.
throughout the entire pandemic. And I found ways to pivot to people being able to call the shop for free and
Right.
do phone consultations. And we would put together cute little pickup bags for them and set them on our windowsill. And there was no contact, and people felt safe. And in that way, we thrived because herbal medicine showed up for people in a way that it felt like allopathic medicine couldn't,
Yeah, definitely.
or that it was too many hurdles. People like, well, I do want to go to the doctor, but like now it's so complicated so anyway, that was part of it. We moved locations and unfortunately the rent quadrupled. And so I will say to anybody who has had an herb shop, there's not a lot of margin, right?
Right.
Like you're not rich, you're not like rolling in money. That's just not the path to choose if your bottom line is wealth. That's just like not the way to go. Especially the way I ran my business because all of our herbs were coming direct from farm. I was
Beautiful.
reaching out, making these relationships with organic and biodynamic farms across the states and a couple in different places. So I was really picky, but also still wanting to provide the medicine to my community in a way that was very accessible and very affordable to them, which just, isn't a good business model in capitalism. So
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of that, and then several years into it, which I think this happens to almost everybody I've ever met who's had a shop. I started to get tired of the extractive kind of commodified nature of the shop that like it was just like herbs in jars being given a price, being sold to people with no real context
I know
for,
exactly what you mean. I mean, I ran a
you know,
bookshop for years, so back in
yeah,
the previous sort of existence. So yeah, I kind of appreciate that. And it becomes a bit of a sort of busman's holiday. It's like, oh, I never get a
exactly.
chance to read sort of thing. I'm just like kind of doshing out books the whole time.
Yeah, and it just, it loses, I think, the whole point of why I wanted to do it in the first place, which was connect
Right.
human people to plant people. But in a retail setting, it becomes about the money and it becomes,
Well,
people like come in and they want it quick and then they want to
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Um, and, we have an issue in the States where many plants, uh, become popular. They become the hot topic, the
Okay.
silver, the magic bullet of the week. Um, and many of those plants are plants that I don't think everybody has a reason to be working with. A
Right.
lot of those
Yeah.
plants are being extracted from very delicate parts of the world, are being extracted from very closed practices, from sacred traditions where that
Oh,
plant
yeah.
is in a
Yeah.
deep relationship with a particular group of people. And it turned into like every day having to have conversations with people about why I don't sell this particular
Oh,
herb or
okay.
why I don't want to talk about some other group's relationship with this plant that is very sacred to their practice. Um, it just was exhausting.
Yeah.
Now, when people come in, I have them locked down for 90 minutes. I get 90 minutes to learn about them and understand their goals and learn what they are experiencing. I believe everybody self-assesses in my practice. Like people use words and body language that tells me exactly what's going on. I like having all this extra time
Yeah.
to
It's good. Yeah.
really give people act as matchmaker, act as
Yeah.
go-between, just say my relationship with the plants, that's really all I bring to the table here. You
Yeah.
can tell me your whole story, and I'm going to say, I know someone who I think can help you, right? And that's just like how it feels, very
Yeah.
organic. But um, I don't like to rain on anybody's parade, but I just don't think in 2026 that a retail storefront herb shop, I don't know that that's the way to
Interesting.
go.
Interesting. Yeah.
But try it. Most of the best ones in the States have closed. A lot of friends have closed their shops. A couple of the die-hard ones that have been around since the 60s, a couple of them are still around. But with online commerce and
Problem, I know. Yeah.
fast information and people just wanting things right now, people are more likely to, this is the downside of current herbalism for me. People are more likely to trust the AI generated search results about an herb than they are to go into an herb shop, which is what we did when we were young, and ask an herbalist and say, well, in your experience, or what do you think about what I'm experiencing? What pattern do
I
you see?
know it's
Plant,
crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I've done a lot of playing around with AI on various topics, and because I mean, I think the most dangerous thing is because they're all programmed to please and flatter. If you say something like, "Do you think I should take blah?" they'll try and make a reason for why it's a good thing. And it's odd because if you come back like, I'm a bit worried that this won't agree with me, they'll come up with a good reason why that's true as well. And you just think this is like, yes, anyway, it's quite dangerous, I think. So,
Yep.
and that's quite aside from all hallucinations and stuff. So that they have, which,
Somebody just did uh, some research on herbal books on
oh
Amazon.
yeah, no, I've seen this. Yeah,
Something like 80% of the books on Amazon right now around herbal medicine are it's
AI
generative
fakes. Yeah,
content.
it's
Um,
extraordinary. And yeah, so
People can make excuses for AI. I'm sure there are positive applications for it. I think it's a technology that, when used the right way, could really
for
change
sure,
so
yeah,
many things
for
for the
sure.
better. But I will die on the mountain of herbal medicine is supposed to be heart-centered medicine.
Well, I think it's
Meant to be
absolutely.
handed from one person to another. It's meant to happen in real time in a space where the the spirit of the plants can move in and inform. And that's just not possible in generative content. So for me, if people are doing generative content herbalism, they need to find their own term for what they're doing because it's not herbalism. It's something
Agree.
else.
Agree.
It's not what we're doing.
No, no, it's
Support an herbalist.
I tell you
Go
what,
talk to an herbalist.
it's a strange thing. But good. I really think the more people who get to know that, the better, sort of thing. It needs to be said. Yeah. Do you have any like classic recommendations? If you're thinking, "Ooh, I wonder," like, is there a book you turn to? Do you have like some books you consider your Bible sort of thing of herbalism that I will go and look up this herb in this tome because I just want to refresh my memory?
Okay.
Or do you have 1,000 books?
I mean, bookshelves, bookshelves, bookshelves.
I know, but it's the one that you'll go to first usually. Or do you not want to admit it?
I mean, I'll admit this proudly that in the clinic, two herbalists that when I'm stuck
Yeah.
or when I need to show my work and I need to say this is what's landing in my head, but I want to make sure that I'm on the right track. I will turn 100% of the time to Lucy Jones.
Yeah.
And look, she is who she is in the UK. In the US, I'm her hype man. I'm working on it. I'm like telling everybody, if you don't know Lucy Jones, fix your bookshelf. Like get her at least the dispensary. Like that should be on everybody's bookshelf. You're practicing herbal. Um, Michael Tierra's Planetary Herbology is a magical book for me because it's the first book where somebody took herbs from the Western Materia Medica. This is before we had Stephen Taylor, right, wrote the Humoral
Oh
Herbal,
yeah,
which kind
yeah.
of did the same thing. He took herbs from the Western Materia Medica, from Culpeper and Greaves, these herbs that we all love, and said, but what are the energetics? What
Right.
is the path of direction in the body? How does the herb fit into an energetic model, both Western and Eastern? So for me, when I'm doing a formula and I run up against, oh, this formula is starting to feel very, very cold to
Mm,
me. And this is, I can turn to his book and trust that there is a Western understanding.
right.
He's got a Western herb explaining. And again, the humoral herbal, fantastic for that as well, from a different perspective, but
Right.
still very, very, very helpful. So those are a couple that, that are on the top. Greaves,
Oh yeah.
modern herbal, get the 2 volume set. You will not find plant folklore, stories, ancestral empirical recipes that have been handed down for God only knows how long, and they landed in Maud Greaves' lap. How? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that book is still to me a living miracle, and then of course the botany, the growing, the harvesting, the folkloric applications of various plants. Um, it's a must have. So much of my work is rooted in Greaves. I don't know if her and I, like, if we were ever to be in the same place at the same time, if we crossed paths, I don't know if her and I would see eye to eye on a lot of things.
I don't know. I mean, having been to a number of herbal events in the UK, kind of herbalists try of most like from the most scientific to the most sort of way out there. They all seem to get on really well.
Yeah,
Certain things none of them like, but there doesn't seem to be any theoretical stuff like that don't have a problem with. They're sort of united in plant, which is quite nice.
yeah,
Maybe behind their people's backs, but yeah, normally it's interesting that it seems to be like there are theoretical differences, but actually I think it's so much rooted in practice herbalism that actually everyone's coming from the same place ultimately.
for sure. Yeah, plants bring people together. Our plant spaces, if there's nowhere else in the world where everyone can feel welcome, where everyone can experience equity and
Hmm.
welcome and accessibility, it should be our herbal spaces. We should
Absolutely,
be
yes.
setting as herbalists because plants do this in nature, right? Plants teach how to be an overarching umbrella under which all beings, regardless of
Yes.
any personal anything, are welcome. And we should be setting the standards, for what those spaces of inclusivity, radical inclusivity can look like. When I
Definitely.
see um, herbal conventions, the diversity is so beautiful. And like, just like you said, people coming together that you're like, outside of this space, you probably would never have had a conversation together.
Absolutely
But
true.
here you can sit and geek out about this plant together in different ways with different narratives and different experiences, but in a way that both of you walk away edified and strengthened. There's this syncretic thing that happens in herbalism where we can meet up and share wisdom respectfully and openly between one another, and we both walk away bigger people for it, right?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and this is like a kind of respect the plants demand, but I think we're in a really unique position in the herbal world to
Definitely.
show people what that can look like in practice for real, We can do it.
And do you have space to grow plants here? Do you grow plants? Is that something?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
you do.
yeah.
So you do, and so a percentage of your medicines is like grown and processed yourself and dished out,
Mm.
which is a great feeling as well, isn't it?
Yeah, there is nothing like, you know, journeying with a plant from seed to harvest. There's nothing more humbling. There's nothing that will bring you into this immediate and direct experience of the cycles of life, the mysteries of nature, the beauty of compassion and giving than that.
Yeah.
And, I say only about 15 to 20% of my the plants that I personally gather are wildcrafted. I'm not a big wildcrafter.
No.
If I lived somewhere else, that might be different. But here, when I find a stand of evening primrose, there's not enough for me to take.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna,
It's a shame. I have this problem. I grow a lot of herbs, and I think I could just let this grow, or I could like make a very small tincture or a little bit of tea out of it. I think I just let it grow because it looks so
yeah,
pretty.
hard for me to wildcraft. I'll be honest. People always want tips and hot takes, and I'm like, garden, grow. If you want 10 pounds of elderberries, Don't ask me where to go find the elderberries. Put some elder, grow some elder,
Oh, some elder.
put some
Yeah.
elder. Um, and so, yeah, we do a lot of raised beds gardening here just because
Okay.
we have a very clay type soil.
Yeah.
And again, we do experience drought conditions here. So those raised beds really let us control humidity, control water,
Yes, of course.
you
Yes.
know, pack them super dense so they're not drying out. And we grew, you know, 4 years ago. One of my best success stories is against all odds. All I wanted to do was grow betony. We don't have betony here.
Okay.
And for all intents and purposes, that plant should not do very well where I live. But we over a couple of years moved some beds around and figured some stuff out, and I got some beautiful, lush wood betony starts
Yeah.
from a start company here, strictly medicinal, and that stand is still
Going,
going strong.
getting a
You
little bit
know,
bigger every year, I suspect. Yeah.
Yep, kind of mounds up, still
Yeah.
has never flowered. I think we'll be on year 5 next year. We've never gotten, flowers or anything, but beautiful leaves, n never harvest. I just kind of let them do what they're going to do. But uh yeah, we can grow, and a lot of medicine from my garden ends up in here.
Excellent.
And other people's as well.
That which is brilliant. Yeah. And it's a way to do it. And I think a medicine made with love is just super efficacious.
It hits different. It lands, I mean, they say the same thing about food. Food cooked with
It
love,
does.
there's a
Yeah.
flavor in there you just can't put your nail on. But uh, herbal medicine, we have this in all of our ancestral herbal traditions, including ones from the Celtic lands, right?
Mhm.
Including ones from
Yeah.
Pan-European, Indo-European traditions, that when medicine is made by and given by a person in deep relationship with the plants, there is a level to that medicine that may not be present when it's made by a machine or made by a big factory or made
Yeah.
by someone who is just following a recipe by rote. You get something extra, more than just that the person will talk your ear off about why they love the formula or the herb so much, right? Like that's part of it too. All herbalists are like guilty of
Yeah. Yeah.
saying too much, right? All the time. But there is a layer to that kind of medicine. It's activated and
Yes.
flipped on in a way that time and time again we see, and I say we because I hear this from tons of colleagues. Somebody's tried this herb many times and never gotten success from that herb.
Yeah.
And then they've had it given to them or handed to them or crafted to them by somebody who's a connection with that plant. And
Yes.
suddenly now they're getting all the benefits they've read. They're like, oh, now this herb is doing the things the book said it would do. Now that's happening. It's like we don't know the explanation for that scientifically, but we feel
We feel
what that's
it's
about.
true.
We
Yeah.
know what that's about. Feeling.
Brilliant. I think that's probably about right time now. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the Polypody Review. It's been great having you on. Really fascinating to hear that insight into US herbalism as well. And I hope we'll have more US herbalists on. If anyone's got any questions for Josh, put them on the bottom of this, whichever viewer, listener, whatever you're using, and I'm sure he'll have a look at them. And Josh, thanks again, and see you next time. I hope you'll be back. Okay.
Thanks all for